officially live. I am so excited to dive into another pre-symposium panel. The pre-symposium panel is a lead up to our executive symposium on August 7th in Austin, Texas, as we discuss implementing meaningful change within our organization. So if you're watching this and you're thinking to yourself, I want to meet one of these three great leaders that are on our pre-symposium panel today, come to our executive symposium on August 7th. I'll post in the chat and in the link the area to, or the link to RSVP. But today we've got Michel, we've got Brandi, and we've got Gary. Thank you all for being here. Michel, do you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, of course. Great to be here. My name is Michel Mongeau. I'm French Canadian. I live in Austin, Texas. I've been in Austin for about 10 years. The last 8 of those years, I've been spending most of my daytime helping product teams develop their skills and also grow companies, mainly within the B2B SaaS space. Startups, scale-ups from 12-person organizations to 300-person organizations, leading product teams, but also in certain cases, I've led entire R&D organizations, product, UX, engineering. Looking forward to the conversation.
Very cool. Brandi, how about you?
So I'm also in Austin, Texas. So I'm actually from this area, and so I've been here for quite some time. And I am serving as the Director of Operations for the Austin AI Alliance, which is a nonprofit organization that is essentially a vessel for-profit, nonprofit, research universities, individuals to really lean into the technology, whether you be very familiar or you be a brand new person that's just trying to learn AI. We welcome you with open arms, and we want you to come and engage to all the capacity, really trying to position Austin in a industry leader spotlight. And then on the other side, I am also a co-founder of Founding Titans, which is a professional relationship management system. So how do we help entrepreneurs and community organizations find what they need when they need it? So events, people, resources. My background comes from talent and actually higher education. And then I leaned out, worked in people ops. And so then I moved into an actual co-founder, just doing all the things.
Very cool. And Gary, how about you?
Hi, my name is Gary Dunbar. I'm Director of Digital Engineering, Digital Transformation, and Operational Excellence and Change with Optera Energy Services, formerly NG Services US. My focus is really around the digital transformation, driving successful implementation of our projects and driving opportunities to create operational excellence within the organizations. My career has spanned manufacturing through the automotive, consumer products, chemical, and logistics and supply chain. Through all these roles, I've worked through both transformation and change management in order to drive that focus on efficiency, but also the people and process improvement. So continuous improvement almost is in my blood through the amount of time I really focused on driving excellence and driving collaboration within the organization. So been in Houston for about 14 years, had a little stint both overseas and outside, but originally from Louisiana and have lived, I think, in 3 other states aside from Texas. So it's really nice to be here. Looking forward to this discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm Garrett Mintz. I'm the founder of Ambition in Motion. At Ambition in Motion, our vision is a world where the vast majority of people are excited to go to work. When they're there, their expectations meet reality, and when they come home, they feel fulfilled. And we believe that starts with people because leaders create the experiences employees have while at work. And so we create communities and technologies to empower leaders to be their best selves for their team. And one of the ways that we build communities, we put out together these executive symposiums. So let's dive into the topic, y'all. So topic is implementing meaningful change within your organization. I think one of the big things that I'm observing a lot lately is the outsourcing of talent from the US to other countries, especially in technology. I mean, I know Michel and Gary, you both lead technology teams. And the question I have is, how do we go about managing the people side of the organization when the business case for, let's say, outsourcing is just so compelling? I was chatting with the CEO yesterday, And he said that recently, over the last couple of years, he decided to outsource his entire product and technology team from the United States to India. He pays like a tenth of what he was paying for American developers and product teams to run these operations. But he has mentioned that it has created a little bit of a toll on the rest of the organization who still left because they had relationships, they had bonds with these people that they ultimately had to let go that were working in the United States. I guess the question I would love to kick this off of is how do we go about balancing the financial, just like this is a very clear strategic decision, it makes a ton of sense, with the human impact of when we let team members go, it creates survivor's guilt and other just feelings of what am I next? Like, where do I belong in this organization moving forward? So, how do you all manage that? How do you go about identifying, when a decision is strategic and makes sense? And if you have to make that decision, how do you go about getting the rest of the team bought into that decision? And when you decide, like, hey, I get it, we're going to save some money here, but it's just not worth the cost to the people side. How do you go about deciphering when, like, what calculation, like, how do you go about deciphering what is the best decision in a given circumstance? Who wants to go first?
I'll go first.
Yeah, tell me, Gary.
Yeah, so my take on it is number one is about communicating with the people and making certain that there's trust in the relationships. Obviously, with the people who are going to have to transition, that trust is going to feel broken, but the communication on why change happens is key and paramount to the situation. Number one is about sustainability of the organization. The organization is there to support the customers and also those individuals who will be there and are working towards making a better future for the organization and those customers. So that's paramount, as in, we always say business is business, personal is personal, but once you're working side by side, as you stated, it becomes an intermix and interaction that really can't really be broken. No one can see outside of you just ruined someone's life. But it's not really that, is giving everyone an opportunity to do something better and helping them to move on to a better position for themselves where they're not going to be in threat or danger. And obviously it doesn't feel that way at the moment, but we have to make certain that the people side, the emotional side, is uh, taken into consideration. But as I said, with the people who are still going to be there, that trust has to be there. You have to establish enough trust in whatever manner possible to make certain that they are still going to be confident. As you began the conversation, I want people to be confident in that what they're doing matters to the organization. So that's why we really strive in my organization to drive the focus on why your work matters and what it means to the organization's future. And what does it mean to the organization's present? How have your contributions been measured? And how well do you align with what goes on in the future? So, articulating the mission, the value, vision, and values for the organization as it goes forward is going to be part of the reason why those employees still trust in the organization to deliver, the same commitment back to them that they're delivering, putting in 40 plus hours a week away from family. So I think that's the number one opportunity for leadership, is making sure that the employees don't see that their trust in that organization is broken.
I can go next. So I would say just being very diligent about having a pulse on the market and what those skills and salaries look like and what the impact might be from, if you are changing your tech stack, okay, is that you're limited on, funds and things like that? Or is it just because it saves time? And then you think about, it exposes a lot about your standard operating procedures and holes in them, and then stall in onboarding, and that can impact brand. Maybe you spent all this time creating this really beautiful brand, and then a couple of one-off errors with a customer could ruin everything. right? And so understanding like those types of things versus the talent and the people side. And then also whenever you are getting ready to have those conversations and in one as a leadership team, how do you we at Google we did a round robin of candidates to hiring managers if we weren't able to find a team to where they were still able to be aligned across the board. How do you do that with your talent ahead of time, right? Because maybe there's introductions that could be made, or making sure that the candidate or the team themselves have an understanding of how best to re-engage should that line be open, right? So at Google, there was a Googlers team that is directly aligned towards former Googlers, right? So reaching out to a former Googler made the most sense, but a lot of times people don't know what they don't know, and they don't know what those support lines look like. Maybe you put together an Excel doc and you round that, or you surface that around on LinkedIn, and that gets exposure to people that they wouldn't have had otherwise, right? So just understanding all the avenues of the journey itself, and then the compensation behind the talent.
I want to reemphasize the importance of a sense of direction. It's really critical for people to be compelled by the team's mission. What are we trying to accomplish? And that informs a lot of how do we measure success. And I think when you look at whether or not we should hire locally, nearshore, offshore, whatever it may be, that entire structure, it should be evaluated based on how do we measure success. So it's very easy to say, hey, we're doing so much more because we've hired, 5 times as many people as we used to have for the same amount, or maybe just a 25% increase. But if that gain in what we're doing doesn't result in better outcomes, then it's pointless. It's just we're just spinning our wheels. So I think that's a key part of making sure that those decisions are not just made based on, oh, this is we're gonna get two engineers for the price of one. If we go to the Ukraine, for example, it's not. I think that's there's a fallacy there that needs to be acknowledged, and it doesn't mean that they wouldn't produce and they wouldn't create twice as better outcomes. But that's not necessarily true. So being able to evaluate that objectively based on how do we measure success as a business? How does this align with our strategic direction? What are the things that we want to do this year? How are the teams working well together? I think a sense of collaboration and that glue needs to exist. I've been leading what do you call it? Distributed teams for since before pandemic. And it's very clear that that does create tension. It creates inefficiencies. It creates sometimes overburdening of existing teams because they need to ramp up other people and they need to work different hours. People with families will then get a sense of, do I really want to work in this environment where I have to, get on my phone at 5 a.m. or get on my phone at 10 p.m. And then you've got this block of, well, now I'm going to do family time, and then you go back to work. That dynamic is not necessarily something that's conducive to happiness. I measure my own happiness, and I think a lot of people do, is when I wake up on Monday, either I'm leaning in and I'm excited about what are the things that I'm going to be challenged with and what I'm going to be able to move as needles and what conversations I'm going to be able to have. And being able to have that, I think, is one measure of success. And then making sure that you have those bookends. A good friend of mine, a long time ago, he the very seasoned PM and R&D leader in analytics. He said, when you look at that type of problem, analytics should be your bookends. You define what success looks like, and you make sure that you have a clear understanding of how you're going to measure that. And then at the end of what you've done, you remeasure. And it's a continuous cycle after that. But making sure you understand what do we want to achieve first, and then figuring out what's the right staffing model for that, I think goes a long way in making sure that you're achieving the outcomes that you set out to.
Mm. Y'all give me a lot to work with here. This is really interesting. I like it. You know, I mean, Brandy, you talk about being diligent, about being having a pulse on the market. Michelle, you talk about emphasizing a sense of direction, like what are we defining as success? And Gary, you're talking about just communicating with people, especially and why their work matters for the future. And it makes me think of a book I read a while ago. It was from the former founder of Intel or CEO of Intel. The title of the book is Only the Paranoid Survive. But the premise of that, and I think that I'm almost applying it from an employee standpoint, is it almost like what you're describing, and maybe I'm paraphrasing, and maybe I'm taking a leap here. And if I am taking a leap, correct me or tell me I'm taking a leap. But part of me almost wonders is like, cool, we have to think about as an employee, if I'm a leader or even an employee within an organization, I've got to one, not only understand how the business works. Two, I've got to understand what my role is in the organization. And three, I've got to understand like who are the other people in the organization and like how do I fit in as a differentiator for that role. I think it can be really easy for a lot of employees to kind of just be like, cool, I show up, I do my job, I get my paycheck, and then I go home. But if they're not paying attention, and all of a sudden they see like, cool, we've outsourced people who are doing your exact job, but in other countries, one may reasonably assume that we didn't outsource them just because we want to touch up on our you or speaking a different language or wake up a little bit earlier or wake up a little bit later to accommodate for different hour changes. We're the company's doing this because they're saving money to go to these other organizations. And so maybe as an employee, I might have to look at a scenario like that and think to myself, okay, what can I do to differentiate myself within this organization so that I can create additional value for my company to further entrench myself within the team? But I don't know, maybe I'm like totally talking out of like left field here. But what do you think about that, y'all? I mean, I think like we're talking about like what is success? Where are we going? How do we be diligent about what's going on in the market? How do we know about what's the future of work and where we fill a space in that work? But we also have to kind of be willing to like grab our work by the horns and be able to say like, cool, like doing what I have been doing for the last few years may not keep me in this role moving forward, just with the speed of technology, outsourcing, whatever it may be, speed of change. How can a person, how can an employee stay on top of what's going on and be, I guess, kind of ahead of the curve? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense to me. I mean, I like to jump in there. So, number one, you're talking about self-preservation above all, right? As people evolve as a species, you have to evolve in every, aspect of your life. Um, just think about getting older. You're not able to eat chips and cookies the way you did before, right? It's like, I don't know about everyone else, but I know I have to limit myself. I know I have to watch my sugar content. When you talk about your employment, your role as it, I think most people sign on a contract that says not everything you're doing, you will be doing is listed here in this employment agreement, right? So you have to identify, what are your strengths and talents beyond what you see on paper? How can you shift your role to evolve into the things that are really going to matter for the organization? And that's where I say aligning yourself with the vision for the organization overall is going to be key because you need to understand as an employee, how do you fit currently and where do you want to fit in the future? And is there space for that in the future? And the conversation around having your role offshored or made redundant, it's a real conversation to have. I mean, we have to be adults in the sense of understanding that technology will change things. The opportunity to employ someone on the other side of the globe really wasn't there in the same realm that it is now. 50 years ago, yeah, you can do it, but you're still working on outdated mail systems. Now our mail system is email, is instant almost. So technology will change things, and it's up to every individual to understand where their strengths lie. And sometimes you have to turn your weaknesses into strengths. And not saying this to be cold-hearted, and because everyone's susceptible. I mean, there's no person who isn't susceptible to being replaced. But as an employee or as a person in general, we need to understand, what is our evolution step? And in order to do that, it starts with a growth mindset. And if an organization has a growth mindset, the organization is always looking for that sustainability, that opportunity to um, to maximize returns. And as an employee, everyone should be encouraged to take control of their career and drive toward a successful outcome. So I'll stop there and let everyone else speak.
Brandi, do you want to go?
I'll go next.
All right. Um, I think about this maybe a little bit more tactically. And I will always pay premium for somebody that will drive positive change, will foster alignment, will bring people together, will create more focus, will create an environment that stimulates collaboration so that we're working on the same goals and we're all putting the different pieces together to move forward and drive to better outcomes. And so I think that's to me that's really what it boils down to because especially in with a distributed workforce, distributed teams, distributed resources, it makes it all that much harder. I remember 10 years ago, when I moved to Austin, I was able to, we had 3 floors, and I would just walk the floors. Like every week, I would at least do my rounds and I'd have a conversation with a bunch of random people. And often eventually they don't become random, they just become people that I know I can have a conversation with and see what are you working on? What are the challenges you're facing? And I don't approach it with those questions, just very conversational. It's the water cooler moment doesn't exist with Zoom anymore. And I think that the niceties of talking about the weather or the fact that it's not 100 yet, things like that is cool. It breaks the ice, but it doesn't achieve the level of depth of relationship that we used to be able to achieve very organically. And some people need to break out of their shell. I'm naturally more of an introvert. I like very small groups, not big groups. So I would go and have conversations with people just to see where their heads are at. And I think that that goes a long way in making sure that the people who do that you identify and that you upskill both the soft and hard skills around how do you engage with people and how do you drive that alignment, how do you drive that focus. And it's really not about process, it's about models. And being able to apply those really goes a long way in making sure that you're achieving what you want to achieve as a group, and then if you find the people who are the sort of the most positive ions or the most electrically charged ions, I guess, and they can be those little hubs that create that alignment, especially with teams like I work with teams in Canada, in the US, across half the states probably. We have a big team in India. People who will create those bonds are really, like I said, to go back to what I was saying earlier, that sense of ownership, I always pay a premium for. And then you figure out how do you equip those people to thrive. And I think you achieve your best outcomes by doing that.
So I'll hit it from 3 angles, leading up, leading laterally, and leading to, people who may be the next you, right? So from a leading up, I would say proactively finding those problems that you're looking to solve and presenting solutions to them proactively. Like even if it's, you get 15 minutes before or 10 minutes before, okay, that's great. How do you now consolidate and be more concise with your ideas and presenting to leadership, right? So being able to be bold enough to own your path and make sure that you're able to drive your career the way that you want and the way that because you're more engaged, right? You're owning the path that you have and it's yours to do as you wish. Leading laterally. So being able to work with cross-functional teams and reverse engineer the jobs and breaking them down from like a skills, a task, so that you can, you understand, because job descriptions are job descriptions. They are what they are. They may be exactly what you need, or they may be so broad because they are looking to cast a very wide net because the pipelines may align towards other things. So I did project management for the global candidate engagement team at Meta. And so I've seen a lot of, really, really, really good things in my career all over talent. And some things that I'm like, that maybe not be the best process and it's not scalable. And it's very impactful, right? Like, could you imagine as a candidate, never hearing back from a process? It's like, that's so discouraging, right? And so when you do finally get that talent, how do you get them hooked and keep them engaged? And I think that that's one that you're able to learn. Okay, if I get bored at my job, but I like the company, how do you move me around? And then from a like a skip lead, right? So being able to have those leaders that are in other areas to its, the loose ties, they bridge the culture and they build the culture to hopefully, engage people in a way that is positive and that you can retain your employees, because talent is tough to hire for. And it allows like visibility into products, projects. And so you can kind of lean into your talent in a different way, and more like they'll say like a talent marketplace, right? So, hey, you've got, your downtime here. How do we shift you into this space for a little while and then bring you back? Or maybe you just like that team, then there we have it. Now you've internal mobility. We love that.
Yeah, for sure. No, I like it. I think those are all really good points. I mean, I think we've talked about a lot of really good like best practices of like things that we've observed, especially when it comes to whether we're outsourcing a team or kind of reevaluating whether or not a team is continuing to work for us as we move forward. I'd love to ask a different question. I'd love to take it in a different angle. What is an assumption that you had about implementing meaningful change in your organization that you proved wrong? Where you went into a scenario where you're like, I thought if we did this, it would actually lead to meaningful change. Like I'll give an example. We did a panel a couple years ago. One of our leaders, she shared that if she went to her team and said, "Hey, here are all the mistakes that I've made over the last few months regarding our operational processes. I would love to kind of have an open forum. Can we all kind of open up and share about like any other mistakes that we've made?" And everyone was like, "Nope." And what she lacked to recognize was that because she was the top leader of that entire organizational group, there was an objectivity gap. There was a lack of psychological safety. So just because she was willing to share the mistakes that she made doesn't necessarily mean that everyone else is going to be willing to share their mistakes as well, because there's not, for in this group setting, no ramifications for her, but potentially ramifications for them. And so I guess that's just an example, but I would love to learn from your experience. What was an assumption you had about what would lead to impactful change that turned out to be wrong? That you were like, well, I was a whoopsie and I made a mistake there. So any stories, any scenarios, any situations where you had an assumption, you tested your theory, it was wrong. I like this because I think it's really great when we can learn from mistakes as well.
I, I used to expect, especially as an IC, as an individual contributor, and it only got way worse when I started actually leading people. I used to expect that people would be open about their ideas, what they were thinking as part of a conversation. And what typically happens is that you'll have one or two people who are quite vocal and they kind of take over the space. And even though they may have the best intentions and seem like they're trying to elicit, even solicit input from other people, a lot of people will kind of just, oh, well, this conversation's already happening. I don't need to add much. I probably don't have anything to add. I just want to get back to my desk and do what I need to do. But the reason that they're there is because we do value their input, and I think it's important to try and pull it out. As when I started leading people, it got way worse. There was this I think this I think you put it well, the concept of the safe space, where you lose that objectivity and that natural tendency to be fairly transparent, and it makes the problem worse because now you have a wall that you need to break down. And so after about 2 years, yeah, probably about 2 years after starting to lead people, whenever I joined a team or I entered a conversation with a bunch of people, and it's not just a one-on-one, where I really wanted to make sure that people participated, I led with, listen, I'm a product manager, or I'm the product management leader, or I'm CPTO, whatever it is. I make decisions that are going to impact your lives, your work, and so on. Because of that, you have every legitimacy to ask me how and why I made that decision. If I can't defend it, it's not because I have that title that changes anything. I don't believe in this hierarchical set of powers. I think hierarchy serves a different purpose, but it's not about having authority. I've never pulled the card, and as far as I'm aware, I've never pulled the card of I'm above you. This is now what we're going to do. If I can't defend why we should do that, why and challenge somebody else's perspective, it's a lost game. If I do that, and if I do it too often, I'm basically going to create complacency. And I think that's the worst of all, is basically killing people's spirits in participating and collaborating and bringing their own piece to the table. So that's definitely one of the biggest sort of awakenings that I've had, is that especially going into people leadership, it became very clear that that wall exists, that barrier exists. It doesn't exist for everyone. Some people are just very upfront and they will say what's on their mind. But a lot of people that you want to participate will just stay quiet. So being able to break that wall down from the start is critical in my mind.
So on a talent perspective, right? So I've done very early processes, I've done the latter, and one of the best organizations I've ever seen, they had a referrals process to where instead of just outright rejecting candidates for that set role, if there were certain triggers or like, they could speak very densely to the person's experience, or the recruiter said, hey, I got a candidate, I'm about to close. Great background. Let's talk to him. They would pivot them to an advisor and allow two-way for a good 30 days for candidates to send recs in, and let alone give the candidate the opportunity to be put in front of other positions within the business. The only thing is that if the people that are doing that, and they don't understand the business, they don't understand the roles and the similarities between things, it's a massive blind spot. And let alone the championing of a new program like that, and understanding, hey, we know that this is an error that we've identified, and these are the changes we're making to the process. And we want to continue to have you refer people in, because that's the easiest way to grow. Like you meet culture, hopefully, right? And let alone like your members are engaged, they're championing the business. And then, so the only thing is like, usually when there's layoffs, talent goes. And so if you have to sunset a program like that, because it is what it is, how do you bring that back? Because it's very fruitful, and then do it in a way where you are more intentional all over the board with the candidates about what's to be expected, the referrals, actually making sure that you've got prepped communication on like where they're at in the process. So they're not like, yeah, refer this person in. I don't know where they went. Good luck, right? Like that's, it's just not a good look on your brand or processes, right? And so, because then there goes your marketing if they don't like the experience. And so, good intent with building it. But I think when it comes to talent itself, understanding the projects and teams that you build and how you navigate those those uncertainties and the impact in the business.
Yeah, two great points. I think one of the mistakes that I've made in trying to run a change process, coming into an organization and expecting, as I introduce the SMEs to the rest of the, I guess, team evaluating change, that there will be an organic, already together collaboration mindset, and not understanding the current culture of the organization, where typically where the SMEs will lie and the rest of the workforce will lie, there'll be like a hard line in the sand. And we didn't have the level of communication and collaboration. It was more of SMEs and leadership say, do this, and that's what we do. So leading toward that complacency in a sense of, well, what's the point in anyone saying anything if it's not going to happen? Our ideas don't matter. And I thought that bringing people together into an environment where everyone had an opportunity to speak their mind would be really a positive thing, and I wouldn't have to really push that much. And I understood during those circumstances that as a change leader, you absolutely have to drive and level the playing field to make certain that there is um, equal value to everyone's voice. And then also, just because someone is a subject matter expert or in leadership, they still have to prove their point to make certain that the people who are living with the change or living with um, the uh, the initiative have to um, see that there or show that there are positives and negatives. I mean, I just stated in the previous conversation that there's peaks and valleys, barriers and opportunities to every change initiative, but the level of personalization related to it is is high to those closest to the impact of the change, and furthest away to those who only see the measurement. So uh, that feeling, and I'm speaking in this particular case of the manufacturing and the chemical industry, and that specific dynamic um, kind of leads to um, a lack of trust because I've seen many organizations um, will implement a huge change initiative, which we call a capital project, and the workforce has to do their workaround in order to make certain that they're still being productive because the change didn't work because the right people weren't involved in the decision-making process. That would be the people who are actually day to day living with it. And what I've seen is just because you bring people together, you can't force that dynamic by putting it on paper that we have people in the room together.
Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
Well, Gary, Michelle, Brandi, thank you all for being here. This was a great pre-symposium panel. I think we covered a lot of ground here. If you're watching this and you're like, I want to meet these three great leaders, come to our executive symposium on August 7th in Austin. We're hosting the event at Ferrari.